Welcome to a brief history of the modern era. The modern era is easily the most studied period in world history. Studying this period has been made easier by the existence of new technologies that have helped record and keep track of events that occur on a daily basis. From cameras to photographs to television, newspapers and radio, the modern era can be easily studied with the examination of facts, evidence, and exact dates. Most historians agree that World War I marks the end of the long 19th century and the start of what we call the modern era. World War I was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand of Austria by a radical nationalist group in Serbia known as the Black Hand. Given that varied nations around the world, especially in Europe, had formed alliances in case of war, many countries declared war on each other in a matter of months. World War I lasted 4 years, although many thought that it would be over by December of 1914. The war involved two major groups, the Triple Entente, composed of Great Britain, France, and Russia, and the Triple Alliance, composed of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. A major figure during this period was Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States. In April 1917, when German submarine warfare was sinking American merchant ships, Wilson asked Congress to declare war in order to make the world safe for democracy. The United States conducted military operation with the Allies without a formal alliance. During the war, Wilson focused on diplomacy and financial considerations, leaving military strategy to generals. The Russian Revolution occurred in 1917, when World War I was still being fought. This caused Russia to sign the Brest-Litovsk Treaty with the Triple Alliance. Being out of war allowed Russia to focus on domestic issues. The Russian Revolution was led by the Bolsheviks and the Red Army, who sought to rid their motherland of the Tsar and his family, along with their fancy, expensive lifestyle. The Russian Revolution can be divided into two parts. The first, which in February overthrew the imperial government, and the second, which in October placed the Bolsheviks in power. After a long and bloody conflict, the Russian Empire was no more. Now, only the Soviet Union stood. Vladimir Lenin stood out as a notable figure during the Russian Revolution. He served as head of government of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic from 1917 and of the Soviet Union from 1922 until his death. Under his administration, the Russian Empire was replaced by the Soviet Union. All wealth, including land, industry, and business, was nationalized. Based in Marxism, his political theories came to be known as Leninism. Women's movements. During World War I, the National American Women's Suffrage Association publicly embraced the war cause, despite the fact that many women suffragists were pacifists. Suffrage leaders suggested that the effort to make the world safe for democracy had to begin at home. Given that many women took up men's jobs during the war, they made their cause for suffrage louder and clearer. Soon after the war, this issue was once again taken to Congress. The 19th Amendment, which gave women the full right to vote, was approved on August 26, 1920. The 1920s were an age of significant social and political change. American life changed from a rural setting to a more urban one. The nation's total wealth more than doubled between 1920 and 1921, and this economic growth swept away many Americans into a more wealthy consumer society. New forms of music emerged. People now rode on cars, and they drank more alcohol than ever before. However, this lifestyle provoked the absence of the Lost Generation, a group of writers and intellectuals. The Lost Generation was discouraged by the state of America after World War I, and so left to Europe, where they would go on to produce their best works. Although the 1920s saw great economic growth for many countries, namely America, the Great Depression severely injured the world economy, causing it to collapse. The costs of the First World War were still being felt well into the 30s, as nations crumbled under the difficulties of droughts, reconstruction, war operations, and stocks. Unemployment struck. Let's examine the measures taken by two different heads of state. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the 32nd President of the United States. He was elected for 4 terms, but could only complete 3 of them. He was a central figure in world events during the 30s and 40s, leading the United States during a time of worldwide economic depression and total war. His program for relief, recovery, and reform, known as the New Deal, involved the great expansion of the role of the federal government in the economy. The end of the Depression in America can be attributed to Roosevelt, his thinkers, and the large-scale industrialization that occurred during the Second World War. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Adolf Hitler. The case of Germany was much different than that of the United States. It took many years to overthrow the Weimar Republic and the Kaiser. Although the Nazis were first seen as a minor political party, their popularity increased with the burning of the Reichstag, which was blamed by the communists. Once Hitler was turned chancellor, Germany slowly rose to the top of the food chain. He eventually seized full power and was named Führer, the supreme leader. Besides eliminating poverty and unemployment, Hitler rallied the German people to seize their destiny and exact themselves as the supreme race. Hitler's ideologies resulted in the conquest of numerous European nations and the extermination of millions of people.
World War II. World War II began when Germany, under Adolf Hitler's control, invaded Poland. Had Adolf Hitler not existed, not only would World War II have probably never happened, but so would Call of Duty. Because of this invasion, Britain and France declared war on Germany, but almost nothing occurred for the several months. In 1940, Germany attacked and conquered Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Germany's first defeat came with the Battle of Britain, since on its second attack, Britain's Royal Air Force could not be defeated by Germans. In 1941, ambitious Germany invaded the Soviet Union, and although everything went very well for the Germans at the beginning, this invasion would mark their downfall. Not only was Russia's territory way too extensive, but its winters could not be overcome. After the battles of Stalingrad and Kursk, Germany fully retreated. In December of 1941, Japan attacked the United States Pearl Harbor, bringing the U.S. to war as well. In 1942, the U.S. fought Japan in the Battle of Midway and greatly succeeded. Britain and America initiated the D-Day invasion when they landed on the coast of Normandy in France, which was occupied by the Germans. The Allied forces closed in on Germany from east and west, and the Soviet Union reached Berlin. Adolf Hitler committed suicide, and Germany surrendered in May 1945. By this time, most of Japan's conquest had been freed, and the Allied forces attacked by bombing cities like Tokyo. The U.S. dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, causing Japan's surrender days later. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was Great Britain's Prime Minister from the years 1940 to 45 and from 1951 to 55. He fought the Nazis in World War II, and he greatly boosted national morale in Great Britain through his talents as orator. He said, "A joke is a very serious thing." He was a close friend with Roosevelt and Harry Truman, and in 1943 he met with the former to plan attacks on all fronts, to invade Italy, and to improve their help for the Soviet Union. He wanted to help the United States in limiting Joseph Stalin's power in European affairs. Now, Joseph Stalin. He worked as a general secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union's Central Committee from 1922 to his death in 1953. Although at first he had limited power, he eventually grew to become the party's leader and ruler of the Soviet Union during Germany's defeat in World War II. During the war, he asked the Allied forces to give instantaneous aid because he believed that the Soviet Union were the worst part of Germany's attacks, and without their help, Germany would win. He received limited help since both Britain and the US were against communism, but decided that a Nazi Germany would be much worse. Stalin, in exchange, promised loyalty to the US and Japan against Japan when Germany surrendered. Now, the United Nations. The United Nations, whose name was given by Franklin Roosevelt, was created in 1945 because too many nations were in ruins because of World War II. Wanting to maintain peace, 51 countries met in San Francisco to sign a charter creating this organization. So, let's talk about the Indo-Pakistani War of 1947 to 1948. This war is oftentimes also called First Kashmir War, and was fought between India and Pakistan over the territory of Kashmir and Jammu. Pakistan, wanting to secure Kashmir, sent militia to Kashmir's capital, but found resistance from both the Indian and British forces. The Prince of Kashmir was Hindu and signed an instrument of accession to the Union of India. After this, India and Pakistan entered formally in war. Little by little, the fronts became more solid on the line of control, which is the area between India and Pakistan that is not recognized as an international border. Ceasefire between India and Pakistan was declared in January 1949. On the same year, military observers as peacekeepers from the UN arrived in the area to watch over the ceasefire between the two states, and they have remained there to observe developments. Also, we have the conflict of Israel and Palestine. Escaping from anti-Semitism, Jews arrived to Palestine to find safety. At first, the Jews and Muslims had a relatively peaceful relationship, but then more and more Jews arrived to Palestine from Europe fleeing Nazi persecution. This worried Palestinians because they thought that Britain, who held Palestine under mandate of authority during World War I, would give Palestine to the Jews. Because of this, the Palestinians created a civil war and armed resistance against Jews and British control, known as the Arab Revolt in Palestine. Palestinians and Jews kept fighting through the years, and Britain eventually passed its power to the United Nations. The UN gave 55% of Palestine to the Jewish state and 45% to the Palestinian state. This, to the Jews, was a safe haven, but the Palestinians felt stripped off of what belonged to them. Britain retreated in 1948, and Israel declared independence. These two nations have remained fighting ever since. Now let's talk about the Cold War, which lasted from 1947 to 1991. This was a period of great tension between Western world's democracies, led by the US, and Eastern world's communist countries, led by the Soviet Union. There was the Western Bloc versus the Eastern Bloc. Even though these two superpowers, representing two different hemispheres, never actually declared war on each other, they participated in the arms and space race. The Cold War began in 1945, after World War II. Yes, the Soviet Union and the United States were both part of the Allied powers, but the US was highly concerned with Stalin's leadership and hopes of spreading communism. Each superpower during the Cold War tried to demonstrate their superiority regarding power and technology. They competed for the best weapons and the greatest nuclear bombs. They each tried to prove that if they went to war, their side would win because of the catastrophic effects their weapons would have on their enemy. Also, they competed for the most developed advancements regarding space travel and technology. Many considered the Western Bloc to have won, since the United States was able to send the first man to the moon. Even though during the major part of the Cold War, the Soviet Union had proved to be more advanced in technology. Now, the Berlin Wall falls in 1989. After World War II, the Allied powers divided up Berlin in 4 zones, one for each ally. Although these allies had won together World War II, they rapidly disintegrated because of their political differences. The United States, Great Britain, and France were all Democrats and capitalists, while the Soviet Union was communist. Because of this, the capitalists combined to form West Germany, and the Soviet Union controlled East Germany. There were many differences between each side, since the population on the West had more freedom to grow economically, and therefore they quickly prospered. Many on the East migrated from the East to West Germany in search of better living conditions, which caused East Germany to lose its labor force, especially the young. To stop people from migrating, East Germany built the Berlin Wall, which separated the East from West and caused great pain in all the population. The fall of the Berlin Wall meant one thing: Soviet Union with communism ending. After many murders of people trying to escape from East to West Germany, on November 9, 1989, the borders between East and West Germany were announced as open, and people were allowed to cross from one side to the other. The wall was eventually chipped away by random people who came to hit the concrete wall with hammers and chisels as a form of celebration. The fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized the end of communism in most of Europe, since the communists gave up and symbolically admitted that people living in capitalism and democracies were better off than with communism. Thank you for watching this crash course on the modern era from 1914 to modern day.